All right, you did it. You finally did it, FHERO.
Done
Have,
it.
having starting this journey many years ago, I think 2019, you finally came back and did the impossible. So this is your exit interview for the game enLIGHTen, Learn the Art of Learning. And I do a video interview like this with everyone who has reached mastery in the game, and reaching mastery is no simple feat. So there's only a handful of people that have actually done it. Lighten, uh, so design-oriented.net/enlighten game takes you to the main web page, and there lists all the current masters of enLIGHTen. And I can also show you the Discord here in the top left corner. As you can see, Firecakes, Jeff, Jubilant, Kirby Kid,
hmm
Marcus, Agent of Force, and Tony are all enLIGHTen masters. So that's a lot of fun. So it's a kind of an exclusive group. Um, Not a lot of people have done it, and it's interesting to see who has done it and who hasn't, because it takes a considerable amount of effort, but the effort all comes out in the process, and it's not necessarily how smart or how familiar people are with puzzle games going into it. So you're one of 12 now.
hmm
One of 12. So, this is just a cool chance to talk about your journey. I like to pull up the stats like here. And as you can see, your time in Explore mode gave you the most enlightenment and mastery points. So you really probably haven't used Explore mode a lot the whole session, and it shot up at the end to
hmm
give you your final points. Um,
Yeah.
and you'd spend some time in the chat doing quizzes and things like that. Cool, cool. Let's take a look at your stats. So overall time is roughly 20 hours. We can go over here, and even though this time's a little exaggerated, 22 hours. Yeah, the time you spent playing the game is roughly 20 hours. So I don't know if you ever thought it would take that long when you first started, but any thoughts on that?
I'm surprised it only took 20 hours. It would take much longer.
That's interesting. I know I put a lot of hours into games like Snakebird and many other puzzle games, so I know that
hmm
some games do take a long time. What's your Professor Layton's 100% files looking like time-wise? Do you know off the top of your head?
Oh, I don't. Let me, it's gonna be a fair amount of hours, but
Yeah, like getting
like
everything.
comparable
Yeah.
in Pokemon Diamond, I 100% that was
Mhm.
like 75,
Okay.
but it's not a puzzle game, so give
Yeah.
me a moment.
For me, I can just drag this over. Something like this. Let's see. On this left-hand column here.
I've 100% Layton's Mystery Journey, one on the Switch. That
Mm.
was 45 hours.
Yeah, my latents are 22, 14, 25, 15, 17, 17, and 100% a few of those. So like the first
Mm-hmm.
one and Diabolical Box, I think. But yeah, about 20 hours, 15, 20 hours.
It's pretty good. Yeah, Cut Trails game
Oh yeah,
on the
Catriel. Yeah,
Switch,
yeah,
45 hours. I love that game. It's
that's
great.
cool. Games like Pushmo, 21 hours if I type in Snake Bird, 36 hours if I type in things like The Witness, 40 hours. So random stats, but a lot of people played this game. Some people got up into the 40s and 60s and stuff. Um, and everyone's different. So let's take a look at your stats to figure out part of your story. So what's interesting is date 10/31/2018 is when you first started playing. 10/31/18.
Interesting.
You played it for a few months, so like all of November, off and on, all of December, a few times in early December, and then you picked it up in 2023. That's a huge jump here. And you can see how, for whatever reason, your puzzle completions kind of flatlined twice. You probably were spending time in other areas, but you can kind of see two huge flat lines in your progress. This is probably why you weren't having a lot of fun with it or didn't decide to stick with it.
hmm
It's because you couldn't feel yourself growing.
Yeah, you're not streaming, just I can't see anything.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm recording it and I
hmm
need to stream it. Good call on this. Oop, and do Discord back up. Cool. You see it now?
Yep, I see it.
So yeah, you had a little flat line here,
Uh-huh.
and then you stopped playing basically for 5 years. Can't believe it's been so long. That blows my mind. But yeah, so you only interacted with a small part of the game. You can see your perfect and solved were 1 to 1, so you were kind of like
Mm-hmm.
you were pretty much proceeding at like what you what I'm imagining you proceed to be like at maximum capacity. You know, when you get a puzzle and it says do this to perfect it and you perfect it, you're pretty much like I'm gonna keep doing this until the game stumps me.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got these like long 2 hour periods of where you didn't solve any new puzzles, and you come back to it in 2023, and that's when you start dipping into the blind and a couple of other everything else catching up. So that's kind of interesting to note. I don't know if that kind of reflects. Well, you remember what your play experience was like when you played it before?
I really only played when you like told me to.
Yeah,
I was trying to help you.
yeah, it helped. It helped. I got a lot of feedback from a lot of different types of players, and just seeing what kinds of things naturally jumped out at them or what they found fun was helpful in shaping a lot of those early days. Um, but yeah, I guess you can say you didn't really you didn't really feel the tug or get hooked until you came back to it much later with a kind of different perspective.
Mm-hmm. I was motivated, like Virgil.
So yeah, these are your stats. Um, so one thing to keep in mind, which is why I like that's why I worked so hard to make the stat page like this. We're gonna basically make a very distinct cutoff between hours 10 and hours everything else. So everything up to the 10 mark will always be in 2018, and everything beyond will be everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you got some good scores, even before, and then in hour 10 and beyond, a long period of time where you were just getting back used to the game for 2 3 hours, and then you started testing yourself, and your random scores slowly creeped up with a lot less variation. Do you see this?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of ups and downs. Still pretty even if you take the average curve on that, but you're steadily climbing up when you're your last few attempts. So
Mm-hmm.
you can see that compared to Tony's, which is this light blue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he had a lot more ups and downs until he
Yeah,
stabilized more towards the end on his 38th hour.
I think he mentioned he would reset a lot,
Mm-hmm. He did. That's
so
why
maybe that's part of the reason.
you have more dots,
I never reset really.
which means
Maybe
you
like
completed
a
it.
few
I think
times.
that's a good habit of yours, not
Yep.
resetting. And you can see he had these long stretches. So like, daily two. What do you think of daily two? Scramble.
Um, top top daily. Which one was that one?
Took the shapes that exist and they scramble it up a little bit by making random clicks, and you're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
restore the shape.
Yeah, that was before one of the most difficult ones. Honestly, the most difficult.
Steady
'Cause
improvement.
you're gonna be seeing a lot of puzzles that you're just never gonna see after that,
Mm.
unless you specifically, use the Explorer mode and look through all the different
Mm-hmm.
how the puzzle looks, depending on what clicks you make around it.
Yeah.
So that one's really tough.
So what do you think about
Or,
Explore mode? It looks like you used it. If I go over here, Explore mode, oop, right here, and you kind of started using it a little bit around hour or 10 through 14. You didn't use it at all. You used it a little bit and then kind of flatlined almost throughout your entire experience until you reached your 20th hour.
mhm. Yeah, I think early on I used Explorer mode to
Yeah,
like,
it looks like
what was it? What's that like try and find solutions to some puzzles
it. Hmm.
that I was not sure about. But as time goes on, there's not as much of a need for that.
Yep, interesting.
But I think, I should have used it for um quiz two, of course. Should have used it a lot more on that.
So
And I
you,
used it to try and find some shapes to add,
yeah, that too.
some like common shapes to add that weren't in the in the map.
So your
So that's at least three things that I use explore mode for.
daily mode, explore mode, notes. You didn't spend a lot of time in the notes mode reading your notes, but you did use your notes. You
Mm-hmm.
just didn't go into the mode for it. Chatting with Richard, these spikes, level select. So just looking at the level select and using that as a tool, just a gradual line increasing, which probably matches the amount of time you were spent in puzzle mode, roughly. And review mode. So how much time you actually spent reviewing your puzzles. If I do this, it's kind of like the same color, but yeah, there's a time when a lot of people were skipping their reviews, so like it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
get them to focus on something they need to take away and learn if they skip that. But it looks like you, in hour 10, just steadily used it as designed and achieved sort of stopped using it as much in hour 14. So your favorite tool? Not Overwatch, because nobody uses that. Relevant notes. So yours is red, and at hour 12, you. I'm assuming you weren't taking that many notes before. So
Mm-hmm.
if I go to notes taken, where is that? Grids.
Give me one moment.
No problem. Notes written.
All right, I'm back.
So if I go to your notes written, yours is this dark blue line, and you
Mm-hmm.
took notes to the first 10 hours, and then it kind of just shoots off the chart, which is incredibly useful. Can't even see it. But compared to Tony, you took a lot more notes, and then Tony had an explosion of notes from hour 20 and beyond. But
Mm-hmm.
you took 357 notes.
Yeah, the first 10 hours I took like 100 notes from the looks of it. And then
Yeah.
the next 20, I'm guessing it's like 250 or so.
Hmm.
So like almost double, more than double, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's interesting. Stumped responses, I think these are notes taken in review, basically,
Mm-hmm.
compared to just notes that you've written anytime. It's kind of interesting. And relevant notes tool, you used it a bunch. And then hidden shapes, you started to use it more right at the beginning of returning to enlighten.
Mm-hmm.
197 times, but the click keeper, which is everyone's favorite, you found an early use for it and it just, went off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
Flow history. That's interesting. You had more of an interest in, unless you were accidentally clicking it, which is kind of what happens. I saw you kind of clicking around. But
I think I did use it. I messed around with it in Explorer mode to see how it worked.
yeah. So this is typically what I see in a lot of players. Click keeper in instant and obvious use. Relevant notes when they start figuring out how to use their notes to keep their momentum and cycle going. Hidden shapes, not so much, but it is a valuable tool that people use at like a in a spurt, and then they go back to the other tools. So that's cool. That's cool. Daily 3 was the ones that are on the week, the ones you've seen the least. So the more you play the game, the more puzzles you'll have seen the least, and that's why there's usually a dip towards the when you start getting all the puzzles solved.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people that happens a lot in a lot of games, and a lot of people don't realize it. The burden of organizing new information, it's gonna have some kind of toll, some kind of tax. So you're gonna have to reorganize things that you already knew, and that's gonna kind of slightly scramble the delicate work that you put into it previously. So a lot of times you experience a dip as you learn things, and people get upset by the sort of the drop in performance, but it's natural, it's expected, and that's mainly why I picked made daily 3 to help people be more comfortable with as things get harder. Some of their skills are gonna need to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
Daily 4 is make a shape from scratch.
That's not too bad.
hovering at roughly a 60 prior, and then you hovered at a higher 80, 85 after the split. Daily 5 scores, which convert one thing to another.
Yeah, I forgot how to do those. But like shot down when I came back to playing,
Mm-hmm.
and it slowly goes up.
Cool. And finally, here with enlightenment level. So your enlightenment and mastery probably were neck and neck. A lot of people's enlightenment shoot up way higher, and then they start applying some of the things that they learned, and
Hmm.
their mastery follows. But yours are more neck and neck throughout the. Let's see, with your mastery being the orange, just kind of trailing and then
Yeah,
trailing.
they almost finished at the same time, I guess.
Hmm. There's these periods where I bet you focus a lot on just solving puzzles, and really after a certain point, solving puzzles in puzzle mode doesn't get you that much, and you kind of realize I could solve these things forever and find an infinite number nearly of puzzles, but it's not necessarily training you in the skills that you need to master it. So I think you see some spikes in some of your time and activity uh, here, or some plateaus, and then you have to work on your mastery during those times in order to catch up. But yeah, valiant effort. What are some of your insights? What do you think?
See, yeah, note taking is very important. Quality of notes does matter. Like I noticed a big difference in what the notes were and how much better I got at the game.
So some of your old notes here, if I do, yeah, from 2018, just say what shape is this, or convert this interesting shape, go to here, turn this into this, and then as you get more and more close to mastery, your notes, you took a bunch of lecture notes, which is great. You start using the puzzle names in your notes instead of just go here. That was a big
Hmm.
difference. You started using hashtags, solution optimal, and you started categorizing everything according into groups. Um, yep, you use multiple puzzle names per puzzle or per note so that you could link more information to more precise information. Copied a few notes from friend codes. If we go to your Venn sorter, let's see what you got. Bring together and diagonal symmetry.
Yeah, a lot of those are incomplete.
A lot of what?
They're not complete.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of interesting. I think mastery at first seems like this huge, daunting goal, but when people kind of sink into the system, they not only reach it a lot faster than they think, but like the struggle that I think they were anticipating is just not there,
Hmm.
right? And like once you reach this level, you realize, oh, like there's plenty more I can do. Like yes, there should always be plenty more you can do, at least in a lot of complex and deep things. It's kind of never ending. You can always learn more shapes. You can always find more connections in between them. You can always make more hashtags. You can always refine your technique. You can always gain more experience by looking at other people's methods and incorporating some of their best elements into your own. Like that's life,
Hmm. For now, at least.
right? Until I die. No. Uh,
Even the game like this is finite. Yeah, pretty
yeah,
much everything is finite, as
yeah.
far as we can tell. Just the numbers are very large.
So some of the things that I found it difficult to find common ground when talking about learning and strategies with the UF heroes, just in general, just kind of trying to talk about the same limitations and experiences that people face. So like before, everyone comes into playing Enlightened with sort of their default. I'm gonna play a video game mode, and I usually stop when I stop winning, and that's kind of like the default mode that everyone interacts with these things. But when we've been trying to talk to you about Smash, we've been trying to talk to you about fighting games and other strategy games, and a lot of it can be pretty complex and difficult to communicate. That we use a lot of shorthand, and I felt like we were always getting lost in details when we tried to talk about things. Like there's a certain fundamental underlying data, like frame data, characters, their moves, their ability, and everyone agrees on that. But as soon as we tried to talk about grouping this information and talking about them in more abstract ways and comparing less concrete things, I felt like we always got lost. And I wonder if you playing enLIGHTen, uh, I wonder if you playing enLIGHTen kind of would change your approach to talking about some of these things.
Yeah, yeah, I think it does.
Like hashtags, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I go to your
Grouping stuff together.
if I go to your process, you made some lecture angled symmetry, bring together diagonal symmetry, growth, multiple solutions, optimal, read, solution, unoptimal, or uh, kind of different ways that you decided to tag and label these different notes and observations that you've been making, and only when you have categories can you start comparing categories and large groups of data by these properties.
Mm-hmm.
And with Smash, everyone thinks about the game differently, but I tend to think about the game in terms of types of moves, categories, what can be whiff punish, what can't, what kinds of moves to string together based on certain properties. And I felt like we could never like lock in on the same strategy because we were approaching the game very differently. But now that it seems so much obvious, so much more obvious that everything is built up of these much more simple, down to earth, concrete observations, and then you pile those things together to make them more complex categories. Hopefully, that'll give us a lot more grounding when moving forward and converting all of this into fighting game best
Mm-hmm.
practices.
Yeah, it's like looking for primes,
Mm-hmm.
building all the other things from them. Kind of how I want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
There's like prime rules, prime concepts that you can combine to get the more complicated ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, you blinded just about everything here, and you have a bunch of connections, a bunch of shapes. So yeah, the reason why it's called enlighten, learn the art of learning, is that it relates to so many things. I mean, the puzzle game itself is so basic that the takeaways and the application to other things should be pretty obvious, right? At some point, when you go to other fields, there's going to be basic interactions you're going to need to keep track of. There's going to be basic routines and shortcuts or whatever methods that you're going to need to build other routines off of. You're going to need to keep all the information straight, so you got to do things to your brain in order to keep things straight. And then there's going to be a huge organization problem once you start getting into the hundreds, multi hundreds of data points, right? There's going to be
Mm-hmm.
this, and there's going to be sort of this necessity to reflect on the things that you've done and to give yourself actionable takeaways. Like all of that is the art of learning, the core that I think applies to almost every skill and activity on the planet. And that's what the game's trying to hone in on, right? A lot of people's
Mm-hmm.
bad habits just kind of they don't progress very well if they have bad habits and bad assumptions, and the game really tries to gently push them in the right direction. So when we think about fighting games, as the model goes, you start off with your certain level of exposure and curiosity. You gain these experiences, and then you have these takeaways, these observations. You build thoughts around those observations, and then at some point you got to go in and process those thoughts into heuristics, into methodologies, into experiments, actionable steps that you can test and then put back through the whole process. And I often describe playing competitive games much like this very same process, right? There's no just jumping online and getting general practice and just keeping your fingers quote unquote warm. Like none of that matters. Like none of that seems to fit the model and it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem to improve very much. And yet that I feel like is the background of all of our general expectations to how to get better at things, not just video games. But we can take your records and we can look at the correlation between the things that you did the best on. Like we go to mastery and we kind of say like at what point in your mastery level, which is the pink, did it shoot up significantly? And for the most part, your
Mm-hmm.
mastery level plateaued the first 10 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were doing a lot of enlightenment stuff there, and it was climbing up, not a lot, right? Between hours 3 and 10, you only really went up 15, 20%, and that's like half of your game time. So when you kind of look at it, and your mastery kind of plateaued at that time, you put a lot of time into the game, not getting better. And then you're like, well, oh, you were gaining experience. You were getting your feet wet. You're like, not exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The game tracks a lot of stuff, and it counts every note you take, and every daily challenge you do, and every second that you spend in every mode towards enlightenment and mastery. So one way or the other, if you were doing some really productive stuff during that time, it would have been more reflective in the chart, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives us a chance to re-examine a lot of our defaults and be like, what am I actually doing here? Why am I even spending this much time putting in one more match, jumping on the For Glory one
Yep.
more time?
Yeah, most of the time is gonna be spent like not playing, I guess, or at least analyzing all the data.
Mm,
Maybe like less than a third of the time should be spent playing Elite or people,
mm. Yeah,
I
Elite
feel
Smash,
like.
For Glory's Smash 4. Elite Smash. Um, yeah, this makes you think, right? This compass here, which is hard to read, but essentially, when I play the game Enlighten and I do like a speed run or whatever, uh, the whole compass is basically filled, like the yellow. So the yellow is relative time. If you spend a lot
Mhm.
of time in one, it's going to peak, and if you spend less time in the other, it's not. But if you spend the same amount
Mhm.
of time in all of them, it's going to be completely full. Um, and when I play the game, my red, which is like the productive time, is a full pentagon, and my yellow is a full pentagon. Because
Mhm.
I'm so used to the best learning practice, at least by defined by this game, that I only put time into things I need, only, and I move on,
Mhm.
and I not an ounce is wasted. And same with mastery. Once the mastery gets going, it's just a full pentagon, pentagon, and that means I know for that last hour, that last 2 hours, I did nothing that didn't contribute to mastery, basically. And getting a feel for that best practice, figuring out what's contributing to your overall success and what isn't is part of the reason why the game so painstakingly put you through this process. One that you can take your own data and look back on. You solved 1,300 puzzle grids, right? 1,300 solved. And then you made 3,637 redundant clicks. Now, like this feature, there's a bug and it never quite turned into what I wanted it to. But the idea was making a redundant click is something that you probably don't need to do much at all, almost no matter what. If you use the
Mhm.
backup wheel, if you reset properly, if you have a plan, if you move at the rate in which you understand, you shouldn't just be like so lost that you just keep making the same redundant clicks over and over. So,
Mhm.
so I had this concept of like best learning practices is a positive and not so good learning practices is a negative, and the game's always keeping track of what you're doing well and what you're doing not so well, and your ratio right here is roughly 1 to 6.
Mhm.
It doesn't tabulate it too accurately, but just think about the concept like, oh, I played this whole game and it was like a 1 in 7. Is that the right math? 1 in 7, 1/7 of my time was spent productive, and at least in terms of clicking the board and playing the actual board.
Yeah, yeah, it should be 1 over the total,
Hmm.
1/7.
And same with deja vu. Like, did you have to see that same shape over and over and over in the same solving process? You saw that means you just kept clicking over and over
Mm-hmm.
and just spiraling, right? And
Yep.
it's really neat. These stats are neat because nobody really cares about them and they're in the background. But when you go on to do other things, you kind of think about this and go like, huh, if I could get this ratio to be 100% positive and 0% negative, like how much more efficient would my time be, or how different would my
Mm-hmm.
routine look like? Yeah, so we're gonna take all this information, we're gonna run with it. I think hopefully you had some fun, right? Um, hopefully it looked like when you got your momentum going, you would go from puzzle to review to note to thing back to puzzle to review to note to thing to blind, and you had this like cycle going that seemed to feed itself. I don't know how you would describe it.
Yeah, near the end,
Yeah, yeah.
basically, I would just try and solve the puzzle. Like I just needed to find solution at first, and then make a note of it,
Mhm.
and then find a good path that's easy to remember,
Mhm.
leads to that solution
Mhm.
using either like shapes that I already know, or maybe the solution has like some pattern, like maybe there's a line going through the middle or something, and that
Mhm.
makes it a little bit easier. So we
Mhm.
can do that first or whatever. Or maybe there's like some shape that isn't in the puzzle list, but it's familiar enough that I can go for it, and then it makes it easier.
Yeah. So knowing having a very specific plan to find and extract information that you know is useful is such a leaps and bounds more productive than just playing games all the time and counting your wins and losses. Like,
Hmm.
and we've read as much in Daigo's book and so many other examples, but yeah, like that frame of mind of, and I tried to explain through enlighten like your whole point, like playing the game and getting better is building more methods, right? And
Hmm.
what you just
Yeah.
explained, it lines up with that pretty precisely. Like, there's no reason to play a puzzle and one, forget that you even played it. Two, not even remember what the solution is. Three, not even help yourself out by doing the thing to help you remember what the solution is. And if that's a new name, a description on how to solve it, or linking a puzzle into
Mm.
another puzzle, like that's just what it is. Every game's different, but some it's gonna
Honestly, like most games are like that.
yeah, it's gonna
When
be
I played
something like
when I
that.
played Smash
Yeah.
before now, I tried to get better with Inkling,
Mhm.
and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna only play Elite Smash.
Mhm.
I think I did like 1,000 matches or something.
Mm.
And like I did get a little bit better, but nothing like significant.
Let me
Like I noticed that like I more or less stayed where I was. The people that I would beat them like a little bit more easily. The people I would lose, I would still lose to. Maybe I would do a little bit better, but ultimately I would still lose to the same people, beat the same people. Nothing really changed for the most part. Like you make just so little progress. All you do is just play matches and don't
yeah,
think about the matches.
I'm showing the video
And
recording
then
your
yeah,
inkling chart that you gave me and your thousands of matches played and all the
yeah.
stats you took on it and all the effort you so much effort, right? So
I
organized,
know. I
so
needed to like really push this method to see, what the
mm,
limit
yeah,
was.
yeah, that's good.
And then I did the same thing in StarCraft 2,
Mhm.
and the exact same thing happened, except it was way more drastic. It was like I didn't not only did I make like little progress, it was like not even like measurable. Like I literally just got nowhere at all
Yeah, you've
for like four
plateaued.
days straight, and I played 10 hours a day
That's
for those
insane.
4 days. And then that's when I came up with like a new way of playing
That's
StarCraft.
you put 20 hours into Enlighten Reach Mastery, and then you were playing 10-hour days of StarCraft for 4 days just for that one sprint. That's crazy.
Hmm.
The, um,
After that, I was like super angry, and I came up with a
oh.
new training method after that
Yeah.
of like play, review losses,
Mhm.
drill, research, drill again, and then play again.
Yeah.
So I cycled through. That was like a 4-day cycle.
Okay.
And after that, that's when I started making progress. And you could see it in my like, yellow chart. I would like go up and
Hmm.
then flatline because I've been playing, go up, flatline, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy. And like the very last cycle, I actually like beat some people that I didn't think I would ever
Hmm.
beat. Like a Masters 2 Zerg. I managed to beat him. And there was this Protoss who was Grandmaster. I almost beat him if I hadn't made like a billion mistakes. Yeah, it was close, but like I was losing to like every Terran. And if I had cycled again, I would have focused. I would have gone like put all my focus onto fighting against Terran. So probably would have made it to like Grandmaster at some point if I had kept cycling. But after that, I took a break and then I joined your program,
Hmm.
Smash program.
Yeah, you're doing well. Um, this enlightened, hopefully, so based on your stories of StarCraft and Smash, we all know a lot from firsthand that some methods just don't work. Some methods are just really inefficient. Some are rage inducing because you're putting a lot of effort in and not getting a lot of results out. Um, Hopefully, Enlighten makes a lot of that more transparent. You can think back on it and be like, oh, I was like doing this and this and this without, taking notes. Therefore, I can only get so many benefits if I don't organize my information and process it into heuristics or methods. Like, if I only do half this triangle, what can I really expect, right? If I just do play matches and specific challenges, like what can I really expect in improving, right? And if the
Hmm.
the whole goal is to get this tiny little distillation down here, then what does it mean to leave that process up to basically these subconscious, and you just kind of want to play so much that eventually down the line your brain's like, oh, I came up with one thought while you were playing the
Hmm.
game. Like, how about you just stop and generate your own thoughts and accelerate at
Yeah.
hundreds of times faster than what you would.
Yeah, a lot of those thoughts, interestingly enough,
Hmm.
they come to people when, at least in my opinion, but they come to people when they play so much that they kind of like lose focus of the
Yep,
game,
zone out. Yep,
and then they start focusing on other
yep,
things. They get pissed, and it's like, man, why do I keep falling for this?
yep.
And like they're not really focused on the game at that point. They're focusing on what happened before.
That's really insightful.
So they make the realization
There's two things with
eventually
that.
because they get tired
Yeah, if you play so
focusing on
much
that.
that you start to lose focus, there is a method of thinking called diffuse thinking, and it requires you to defocus on the thing so that other connections that are normally weaker can be stronger. So if you play
Hmm.
so much that you go from focus to lack of focus to almost no focus and you're still playing, you're basically so tired that you push yourself into a diffused mode of thinking, and that's when some ideas pop up. There's no reason to drive yourself to madness playing so much
Yeah, I
just to
agree.
achieve that state. You can go for a walk, you can take a shower. Those two things work instantly. So yeah, like knowing the science behind it and also looking back on examples like that, hopefully give us a lot of clarity on what we're really doing to our brains and how what we really need to do to improve. You're totally right. Some people, when they say, "Man, I just play matches," 6, 7, 8 hours,
Mm.
like that's basically you now know how to decode that. They're playing too much, most likely. They're not taking notes, most likely. They're slowing down their whole learning process, but they're just trying to freaking brute force it. There's no need to.
Hmm.
So yeah, this was a great learning process. Appreciate you being the 12th member of the Enlightened Masters. So there's a couple of things I'll share with you here at the end of this video. Reaching enlightenment and mastery is just for mastery is mostly an arbitrary stopping point. I just like what would be hard but not too hard, and I just like picked some numbers. I picked 85 and up to qualify for mastery points and daily
Hmm.
challenges. Could have been 90, could have been 100, who knows? But everyone who reaches it realizes like yeah, you can go farther. There's nothing permanent or distinct about mastery level. It's just a smooth learning curve all the way up. You're either doing best practices or you're not. Um, and the one way you can kind of test yourself, once you beat the game like you have, you can go into daily challenges, and you can even activate blind mode. and
Mm-hmm.
play all the daily challenges completely blind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be surprised. When at the height of my enlightened play, I did all the challenges blind and posted my scores, and they were all like in the high 80s and 90s, except for one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, like once you understand what you're doing, the visuals aren't what you rely on. It's all up in your head. And that was kind of a neat
Mm-hmm.
way of saying, if you've got this, you've got this. Um,
Yeah. You
so
have to remember the puzzle you just saw, right? When you play blind.
if you do it for like three puzzles that are at least seen,
They give you like a small amount of time to look at it.
yeah, the very first frame, or if you just play certain modes, no lights come up whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's one cool trick to realize that you're not done yet. The second one is enlightened gold is so a lot of people play this game. They're like, oh, I want these tools everywhere. I never want to do a hobby or practice something without the ability to instantly take notes and to record snapshots and to see everything in a nice spread and to have all of my information organized. I'm like, I know, like these tools are extremely convenient and they do the trick, right? And even though they may look different for other activities, the basic idea is to get as much of this stuff, curiosity, to feel as much of this stuff, which is exposure, to get as many thoughts as you can to distill them down and repeat the process. For you in particular, I don't think you took advantage of the friend feature that much.
Mm-hmm.
You did,
Yeah,
yeah. What do you think?
yeah, I didn't have any friend codes. I didn't even know how to add people. But
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't take advantage of it.
What would you do different?
If I were to do everything again,
Yeah, with the friends part in particular.
oh, the friend code. And the friend code's almost like cheating, but I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure if I would use it. I think I don't know how to use it, put it
Yeah,
that way.
I think your
I'm not sure how I
comments
would
are
use it.
spot on. Like in some ways, it is like cheating when you just get the answers from your friends. But if you kind of step back and look at the big picture, there's so much information to learn. What's the point of I don't know if there's any difference between somebody going into explore mode and clicking random until they find a solution, noting the solution, and then going from there versus getting the information from a friend. And when you realize a lot of your low level experience with the game is random anyway, you're just trying stuff and seeing what happens, there
Mm-hmm.
really isn't a lot of value there. It's good to get that experience, but you don't need that much experience doing random low level stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
so at some point, I consider friends to be an extension of myself. They think differently, they talk differently, they play differently, and if I can somehow let them do work, grunt work for me, and then I can take all the high level stuff, like their personality, their solving methods, or some other high level stuff. That's basically a saving me like multi X times working on the same problem. And I consider social circles and friends to be, if you use them correctly, extensions of your own learning process.
That's interesting. I don't think I've ever done anything like that. I'd like to try it though.
Yeah, yeah, just something to keep in mind. Uh, because with Smash and everything else, you aren't figuring everything out yourself. Even for me in cases like Kirby or whatever, or Pit arrow looping and things where I pretty
Mm-hmm.
much did it by myself, I still didn't do it entirely by myself, and other people still had lots to help me with feedback and even just playing
Yep.
against me and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, like everyone does research. Like in StarCraft,
mm,
the pro players talk about you should always watch other people. Because they'll do something that you didn't think of or you didn't research. They put time and effort into figuring it out, and you get to see the end result. And you can immediately, judge if it's something you want to do or not.
mm,
And you kind of want to, you do kind of have to trust them that they more or less did a good job figuring out if something is good or not. But it does save you a lot of time and effort. Like you do combine the knowledge that someone else gathered. And that almost always that's better than just trying to do everything yourself
yep,
because you just don't have that much time.
yep, agreed. having watched so many people play enlighten, and also I read the website of the mathematician who solved the game mathematically and just read through his math and like absorbed as many different perspectives and viewpoints on the game as possible. Now they're all in me, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter if somebody else started the process. You still have to do the necessary process of, that's why it's called my process, of getting it in your own head for you to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still work. It's just hopefully making it more fun and more effective and more social. Um, the
Yep.
final,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Working together is really
Essential for
good.
human
Yeah, we have
society.
people need to learn how to do that. Some people struggle with it, want to do everything on their own.
Hmm.
Honestly, like it's too inefficient. Not really a human thing to do either.
Hmm.
Although it can be good sometimes,
Yeah.
but generally not worth it.
I know you deep dived in a lot of self research. I mean, every that's so good to do your own research. It helps you
Mm,
ground yourself and see. But we're also gonna in the future interject as much social and outside help as possible, so you can get the best of both worlds. The last thing for Enlighten is the Enlighten goal is a fun little twist on Enlighten, and it's where you start off with a new cursor to play with. So it kind of resets all of your notes, all of your heuristics, all of your whatever, because the cursor is different, and the
mm,
same things just don't work the same. But the other trick is that your puzzle mode is entirely blank, which is how I started my Enlightened journey when I was programming the game for the first time. I had no preset puzzles. I just had to
mm,
start clicking and naming things and then arranging them. So it gives people an interesting chance to see, to exercise their best practices all
mm.
over
You
again.
have to build your own chart or map.
Oh yeah, from scratch.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's
There's no like set
there's nothing. It's
puzzles.
blank.
It's just that,
You have to
but
put every
how do
single
you how do
one.
you how do you progress through the game then?
So the only thing the game is testing you at that point is mastery through daily challenges. The
Hmm.
daily challenges
All
don't
right,
unlock until you have a certain amount of puzzles of certain click complexity to like give you the
I see.
challenge. So you pretty much have to build up a knowledge base and do it one puzzle at a time by adding it and then linking it, renaming it yourself, adding it, and then making the connections to. And then your game looks entirely different from somebody else's, unless you use the friend feature and you start grabbing their shapes and just
Hmm.
piggybacking off of how they think. And that's a really good experience to go through to illustrate what we just talked about, but it's one that we'll save for later. Uh,
Interesting thought. Okay.
yeah, so that's in line. Glad you played it. Glad you. I think we all learned a lot, both by you know watching you play, talking through some of these issues, but also by doing all these other aspects of this fighting game self-learning journey. So appreciate it. We're gonna keep moving on. I'm gonna stop the video here. Any final words?
Um, Not really, I guess.
If you had to,
Um,
if you had to give somebody one piece of advice if they were gonna start playing Enlighten, what would you tell them?
let's see. Yeah, definitely take notes, like the solutions and the path to the solution, because it can be very useful.
Hmm, cool. All right, hit and stop.